Has this ever happened to you? You're down 2-8, 30 team farm, and first turret blood at 10 minutes. Your team has a Gangplank, Kha'Zix, Orianna, Kog, and Rakan. The enemy team has a Renekton, Gragas, Syndra, Caitlyn, and Karma. You think to yourself, alright, we outscale in each role. You successfully deflect the enemy team for winning for 40 minutes, and then you take a team fight at 6 item. You get your ass kicked. What happens? Okay, so maybe that very specific situation didn't happen to you, but something like it. You're down a lot to champions that categorically outscale in each role, with maybe the exception of jungle in this case. You look at each role individually and say, Gangplank is better than Renekton late. Orianna is better than Syndra late. You see that at least 4 or 5 champions on the enemy team hard outscale the enemy team. Or sorry, 4 or 5 champions on your team hard outscale the enemy team. It's a no-brainer that you win late, right? But you don't. Why is this? Well, there are 2 specific reasons that this happens. The first is team composition. Kha'Zix or Gangplank can sort of split push, but honestly Syndra or Renekton can hold them back pretty well. Rakan is your only engage. That's probably not enough based on the enemy team's disengage. You have an awesome kiting composition, but the problem with kiting compositions is that they primarily exist in front to back games where your kiting is going to result in your backline staying alive long enough to kill the front line first. Sure, Gangplank, Orianna, and Janna can all peel while Cog fires to the front line. That's really scary, but if the enemy team doesn't like the fight, it's unlikely you'll be able to force them to stay in that with kiting. While Caitlyn and Syndra have significantly less DPS than Orianna and Kog'Maw, you're losing your frontline first because your frontline has a Sterax and GA at best to protect them, while the enemy frontline has real tank items. I'm not saying that their team comp is necessarily favored against yours at 6 item, I'm just providing an argument for why it's not as one-sided as you think. Having a tank is definitely an easy reason why one comp outscales the other, but there are plenty of less obvious ways champions can interact to scale differently than you think. The other reason you might be blindsided by scaling is that the disparity between competitive play and your own games is gigantic. You might hear a caster talk about how powerful Rakan is when you get past lane phase, or how Blitz needs to make aggressive moves early to be worth it as a pick. You get in your own game in bronze to low master, and Rakan seems to do nothing in late game. Blitz can do nothing all game, but then end the game by getting one hook on the enemy mid. The reason that there is a difference is because you and the pros aren't playing the same game. The Blitzcrank won't do as much as at 40 minutes against the pro team because they're likely to respect the hook and play around vision. There are some general trends here. Enchanter supports have always scaled really well compared to melee support in solo queue, while in competitive the trend tends to be the opposite. At a higher level, the Enchanter supports will harass down the melee supports and respect their engage. At a lower level, the Enchanter might not harass optimally, and the melee might find more kill opportunities in the 2v2 lane. In late game, the defender's advantage is gigantic in solo queue. Engaging is hard because even with smart pings, you're likely to not have your team react as immediately as in competitive. Defending is easier. You wait for it, then CC the diver or shield your ally. This gives your team plenty of time to follow up with more defense or a counterattack. Another good example of this is Gangplank. There was a Reddit post saying Gangplank was really a mid-game champion that got a lot of attention. I agree with that post if you're playing in Diamond 5, but not in Challenger 1000. Gangplank barrels are really hard to dodge, but they're also pretty hard to hit. A good Gangplank will hit a good player more than a bad Gangplank will hit a bad player. Furthermore, chunking can get you a lot more advantages in high level where people will actually react with objective takes, and people have more patience to play around his non-diving playstyle. So you hear Gangplank is good late game, then you dive with him at 6 items and wonder why people call him a hyper carry. There are a lot more examples, but I don't want this to drag on too long. The point is that this too is incomplete game knowledge. You hear something from an authority, you copy it blindly, then you don't really see why it's true. People tend to either continue copying that belief without seeing fruition from it, or they tend to dismiss the authority on the matter as wrong. Both of these are faulty beliefs based on incomplete game knowledge, and one more example of why good coaches teach students the why as much as the what if they want to see meaningful improvement in their gameplay. And that's all. Peace.